Hello, everybody, and this is another episode of I Am Worcester. It is William McNeill, and I am here with School Committee...
Hilda Ramirez.
Okay, now, are you a member of the School Committee Board, or...
Yes, I'm currently a member of the school committee.
And you're
running
running again?
On my first term.
And you're running again?
Yes, and I am running for re-election to the school committee.
And we were just talking off recording, and you were saying how busy it was. I can only imagine how busy is it with school going on and everything and meetings and stuff that you have to do. You want to take a minute to talk about how busy it is for you?
Sure. It is a part-time job almost, the school committee, where you have a lot of meetings and a lot of preparation. You have to read materials before your meetings, and then I have a full-time job. I work at Worcester State, so between that, balancing going to school committee meetings, and then this year we have a re-election campaign, so you are doing all of that and getting out there so that people can meet you, people can get to know about you. So it's a plateful. It's
So how long have you been at Worcester State?
I've been at Worcester State for 3 years now, a little over 3 years.
All right. Now, I ask this question to everybody that I interview. It's like a basic question that I ask. When did you fall in love with Worcester? And you can answer honestly. I have gotten surprising answers where people said, "Who said I love Worcester?" So I'm a little more apprehensive of asking it, but
no, I do believe that I did fall in love with Worcester. I actually went to college in Boston and decided to make my way this way because I was dating somebody, and then I started to pay attention to the transformation of the city. And I was like, oh, this has a lot of potential. I was seeing all the improvements and to buildings and the potential, the colleges and all of that. And at one point, it was actually my sister, because I had bought a house here, but I was working in Boston. And so in a way, I was living here, but, spending my professional life elsewhere. And my sister at one point said to me, "You've never really given the city a chance."
Wow.
And, and it was powerful because she worked here and her kids were growing up, going to school. And she says, this is a great city. You should check it out professionally.
Yeah.
And, and that's when I said, really? I've never thought of that. And then I said to her, you're right. I should start looking for some, to see how I can connect professionally. And then that way, I don't have such a long commute. And maybe I would enjoy the city.
Yep.
Because I was spending my whole time in a car and, and doing all kinds of things and not a lot of time in Worcester.
Right.
And so I decided that after going to graduate school in education, I said, this is the perfect time. Because I'm transitioning from the corporate sector into education. I'm starting new, and I'm going to look into it. And I started by developing my own business because I didn't know what I wanted. And so I found that I fell in love with the city because I got so much support for my first business. From the chamber, from the arts community, from small businesses around the area that had similar experiences to share, and people, all these people just really opened their doors and said, this is how it's done. Right. And I felt like I had never been supported so much in my life for, starting something so new that, and so I said to myself, well, this must be a great place then to develop a business, because I did feel all that support in the in the beginning of the stages of my business, and from wonderful people like Dolly Vasquez, Alan Fletcher, Honey Hess, people that were really into the arts and really wanted to see me succeed. So that's when I fell in love with Worcester, when I found all these people that were willing to take the time, meet with me, show me the ropes, and say, this is a great city.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things available for people in Worcester once they find out what they have, or what they find out what's available to them in the city. That I believe this is really a great city. It does have potential to get a lot better, and it should be a lot better now. But what was your first business?
My first business is Ritmos Academy. It's a cultural performing arts studio.
Oh, okay.
Focused on Latino dance and cultures, and we used to have a studio, but we also did a lot of workshops for Latino culture, and I just love that studio, and I spent 12 years with it, and then I decided to run for school committee, and that's when I had to let go of something in my life.
Yeah,
and
that is another thing about Worcester, is there's so many opportunities, and there's so much room for you to feel that you make a difference, that sometimes you spread yourself too thin trying to fix everything, and you have to kind of narrow your focus down. But that is a good trait to have, to have the heart to want to do everything, but then you have to let some things go. So you can dance?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I was just dancing at Start on the Street. They had a salsa thing, and I was out there doing my salsa. Okay,
I'm going to pause this. I'm going to pause this interview for 5 seconds so I can show her my dance video, and then she's going to tell me what tips or how much work I need to become a really good dancer. Let's go! All right, so she just saw the Why I'm Mad infamous video, and what do you think? Do you think I got potential?
You have a lot of rhythm there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all it needs.
Okay, all right. I feel a little encouraged, even though I think you're just being nice. So you decided to walk away from the dance for now, forever, or just for this season?
For now, because there's really not a lot of room for me to develop anything. I work full time. I'm on the school committee, and what I have been doing, though, that it's interesting, is I passed on the studio to a student of mine that graduated from college, and I'm very proud of that. Okay. Because anytime that we can develop a young person and inspire them and mentor them, it's a life that you've changed and that you've transformed, and then she's able to mentor other young people, and so that's what I feel I'm proud of, that I was able to leave it, but that the legacy continues.
Right, so you pass it up.
Right.
That's another thing I think that Worcester needs more of. When people apprenticeship, where they can just give it down or pay it forward to someone else.
Exactly.
But so when did you say it's time for me to join the school committee?
It was when I, part of my time after I developed my studio and I had it working for 5 years, I was approached about applying for the position of executive director at the youth center. Okay. And when I was at the youth center, I was working with so many amazing, talented young people. And I was seeing a pattern every year. So when I started at the youth center, I was just working with all these inspiring young people, and but noticed a little bit of a disturbing pattern, which was that a lot of our young men of color, especially Latinos and African American, that were at the center, they go there so often to record in the studio, to just feel who they, be themselves, right? And we loved having them. But what I noticed is that our young ladies were going off to college and they were improving their lives, and our young men were staying behind, and that they weren't doing anything that I thought was productive with their lives, because they weren't going to college, they weren't doing the apprenticeship programs, and they were just hanging out for too long at the youth center. And I felt that, that was a little bit like, what is behind this? And so I started to really talk to them, find out what their lives are about, what's driving this. Is it motivation? Is it lack of awareness? What is it? So I started to develop programs to help them. But along the way, I also noticed that they were very discouraged with school, and that a lot of them had situations in where something went wrong, an interaction with a teacher, something that happened that discouraged them, and they now felt that they weren't good enough, that they didn't have the skills, that they couldn't do. And that disturbed me greatly, because I feel that they have such amazing potential, and I wanted to see that potential realized. And I felt that, doing the day-to-day work is one way, but also examining the systems in which our young people live is another way too. And so I started to get very involved in the Department of Youth Services and understanding what they're trying to do and how our youth get connected to that system.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to just kind of find that our youth need a better opportunity of staying in school, completing school,
Yeah.
being able to get into college, even if they may think that their goal is not a college education, but just to have the skills to allow them to be, to be thinkers, and that they could envision a future for themselves. And so I started to worry for them and worry for my own community, because a lot of our kids are not doing well in school.
Right.
And so I said to myself, well, I really want to try to make a difference.
Okay.
And so that difference to me meant maybe I should try to get into the school committee. Maybe I should do a policy area piece, because that's my background in graduate school, and I need to be closer to the policies that are being implemented. And while I'm great at the ground level and I can connect with a lot of young people and I can do a lot, I feel like I want to impact the larger structures that are not working for our kids.
Okay.
And so that's how I decided to run. And it didn't take long. It was Juan Gomez and a few other people that said to me, you should think about running. It's complicated, but this is what it takes. I've done it. It was difficult, but you can do it. And some of other friends in the community that saw the potential that I could do it. And I said, well, I don't know what that's all about. I've never been a politician in my life. I've never had one in my family. I've never really been involved in politics in any way, except for maybe in Boston I would go to fundraisers for people that would invite me, but didn't really understand the system. So part of the ask that I says, I'm willing to put myself out there if you guys are really willing to help me and support me along the way.
Right.
And so many people did. And
So Juan Gomez is a person you feel that helped you out a lot?
In the beginning, yes. He basically showed me the ropes of, one, encouraging me to do it, and two, asking me, telling me who to talk to about learning about this role, because he had ran for a different role.
Right.
And then, being supportive. He was supportive.
Yeah.
And so to me, that is what it takes. Remember that whole thing about me passing on that business to a young lady.
Yeah.
I feel like, somebody in elected office sort of helping another person to come along, move forward.
Yeah.
It's another way.
Yeah.
And so that's what I feel that I think, and it's interesting that now he's running again.
Right.
Right. And that's why I feel like I have to support him, because he believed in me and supported me.
Right.
And so it's all about that. It's all about how we help each other. Yeah. And how we help each other understand these roles and how to have a voice within them.
Yeah. The bigger picture. It's all about sometimes when people are running against each other, I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying when people run against each other, sometimes it becomes a mudslinging thing, and then if they lose, then they support them. So it's like you kind of damage them, then you have to lift them up. So sometimes that does get a little messy. But speaking of which, you talked about the youth that weren't going on in their lives, and they were staying behind, while most women were, or a lot of the girls that you worked with, were going ahead to college and better their lives. What is your opinion on the state of schools today?
I believe that we have a long way to go, and I don't believe that we're even scratching the surface of understanding our kids and where our kids are coming from and what they need to succeed. And I mean that from very many different levels, right? So we have a structure that might have worked in the early days, but that it's not the best structure for kids today, because we have kids that are learning differently. They're learning through technology. They're learning visually. They're taking on so much information at such a high speed that we really need to be aware of that learning, and we need to be aware that there's also that foundation too, that we all need to learn, reading, writing, and all the foundation skills. But we also have to understand that these kids question things a lot, right? And this is a society where they have a right to question their environment and who they are, and who's educating them and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we're responding well to that.
You know, I think like in the 80s, like when I went to school,
Yeah.
it was whatever they told us, we almost like had to like take it and
Comply.
accept it. Now, if you try to tell a kid something and they don't believe what you're saying, they will completely tune you out and tell you that they're tuning you out because they don't believe what you're saying. But I was under the impression that Massachusetts, at least, and I remember driving on the highway. You remember like all good places have like good cloud. That green sign that said Worcester has 10 of them. I remember seeing that sign. So I always thought, from an educational standpoint, Worcester was like above average or good. What is the state of that change now, or?
Well, I think, my understanding at least is that Massachusetts is on the top list of a good education system, but that is because when you put together all of the suburban districts, right? Wellesley, Newton, right?
Yep.
Shrewsbury, Westboro, then of course that's going to lift you.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at urban communities and how we compare, we are better than some of the gateway communities like Springfield and other cities, but we're nowhere near where we need to be for our families and for our kids. And I feel like we have a long way to go.
Okay, so see, that was a misunderstanding I had because I always, for some reason, assumed that Worcester's best schools in Worcester. So what else do you think is misunderstood about the state of school in Worcester today?
One of the areas that I feel that is really misunderstood is how to educate kids that come from different countries and they're English language learners.
Right.
And not only that, what's misunderstood is that we have a complex mix of kids coming from Africa that speak English. Some come from Africa that don't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
Some come from here, from Puerto Rico, and they're not immigrants. Or, Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth of the U.S., but they might be only Spanish speakers, right?
Right.
And so all that complexity, I believe that we're not taking enough time to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're not taking enough time, we're making quick assumptions.
Right.
And those assumptions are hurting our community.
Yeah.
So rather than embracing the diversity that is here, we're sometimes rejecting that diversity.
Yeah.
And it's hurting us.
And it's such a diverse city too. Worcester's really, really diverse, but it's also really one of the most separated or divided. It's one of the most divided cities too. It's really sad when you think about it. So I was on the radio station yesterday, and we were talking about discipline in school because now you have access to Facebook, and on Facebook you'll see almost every day a new video of somewhere in the country a student fighting with a teacher or a student fighting with another student. And the DJ that was with us, he's from Africa, and he said that when he went to school, and this was like a couple of years ago, they used to get beat with sticks when they would come to school with a button missing on their shirt or something like that. Now we all know that's not. There's no way I'm even hinting at that should be suggested. But discipline in school has been a big subject as of late, especially with what's going on at North High. Now, I think it's being blown out of proportion. This is just my opinion that it's being blown out of proportion because someone told me, and I'm not sure if this is true, but that statistically the same amount, it's like all schools for incidents like that are around the same level. But North High is getting pointed out for whatever reason. So how do you feel about the discipline system that's in schools, not just North, and what would you suggest for changing it for the better?
Right. So I believe that our system, the whole district, has a punitive system.
Yep.
And it still has a zero tolerance system. You do something wrong, you're out.
Yep.
And there is no second chance.
Okay.
And life for teenagers and kids, it's about doing the right things and showing kids the right way. It's about building relationships. And if you don't have a relationship with a young person, it's very hard for you to be able to help them see the right way. Right? So for me, it's about relationships first. And so when you have a relationship with a young person, then you can ask them to respect you.
Right.
Because you've earned that.
Yep.
As a human being, you've connected.
Right.
Then the second thing is, this is what respect looks like for us here. And we need to be modeling that because kids are developing. They're not fully developed grown-ups yet.
I so agree. agree.
And it's like, it's like a child in your home.
Yep.
You have, you end up telling your daughter, pick that up, pick that up, pick that up. But you're not telling her why.
Right.
We want to have an orderly house, and that means that we all live here, and we want you to, be able to walk through without stumbling, and you give them reasons why. So you can't just say, do this, and not give them the reason, because we are, again, living in a society where kids are challenging a lot of things, or challenging a lot of ways. So what are my solutions? My solutions are what I did at the youth center, because that's where my experience comes from. At the youth center, I would always treat all students with respect. I would get to know them personally. Once I got to know them, we would have a set of guidelines.
Right.
Kids would challenge me on my guidelines, and they're like, oh, this is not fair. And I'm like, okay, you don't think it's fair? Let's sit down and let's work on them together.
Right, yeah.
Bring them into the process. What is it that's not working here that you would like to change, but here where I'm coming from, and what I expect of you? And if you can convince me that you have a better way, we can negotiate.
Okay. So my 14-year-old, and you just met her, maybe about a month and a half ago, our relationship was just stressed. We had a stressed relationship. I didn't like her. I loved her, but I didn't like her. And I think what happened was she turned 14 and then she turned 15, and I had, going in as a parent, a preconceived notion that she's going to be a teenager, she's going to be a handful, she's not going to want to spend time with anybody, she's going to be a jerk, irritable, she's not going to be social to the rest, she'll be mean to the rest of the kids, and I'm just not going to stand for it. So it's like automatically I set our relationship up to fail. And it wasn't until I started focusing on what you're saying now, focusing on having a relationship with her and laughing over things and getting to know what she thinks and what she wants and why she does what she does, and understanding, our relationship has gotten that much better. So I was going to ask you about police in schools, but I don't even need to ask you about that. It's a moot issue, because if you're having that relationship with them and you're doing what it takes to get to know your students as teachers out there, it's a much more effective way to be authority over them, and also to let them be authority over themselves. So how do you feel about ways to improve that? Because some people will say, well, Hilda, that sounds good, but there's like a lot of kids in class, and maybe the teacher doesn't have time for one-on-one with every student like that. How do you respond to that?
So I respond to that in ways in which I've heard in the district that some schools have taken it upon themselves, for example, to have teachers go out to the community, get to know the kids on their terms.
Yes.
Not in the classroom, but out in your community, and get to know them for what they are and what their environment is.
Yep.
And not, I would ask educators, and I know that they're fully capable. We have such great teachers, and that, be sympathetic to understanding kids where they are. That developmentally, we're going to have a bad day. We're going to have tempers, and we're going to have situations. And that I believe that it's a better situation when you can, as an educator, as an adult, give up that power every once in a little while.
Right.
Not all the time. Give it up when you don't feel it's that important to have it. And let that kid have that power for a second in a positive way. If they're recommending something, then this is how I connected deeply with youth at the youth center. If I feel that they're offering something that's going to improve all of our lives, I'm going to stop and listen. And I'm going to take every consideration to think about ways in which I can implement that. And I don't think we spend enough time listening to our young people.
I absolutely agree with that as well. So if we have people like you on the school committee board, I feel better as a parent to have kids, and I mean kids plural, in school. I have 7, and one moved out. Praise the Lord. But the rest of them, they're the 6 of them, and they're all in school now. So it is a lot of these things I was concerned about. One last question, though, a little side question. They recently announced that school lunches will be free for everybody.
Right.
And not only that they're going to focus on being more healthier lunches for the kids.
Right.
How awesome is that?
That is an amazing concept that the state has introduced.
Yep.
Realizing that sometimes, that's one way to make everything equal, right?
Right.
Isn't that amazing that
Yep.
we can figure out ways
Mm-hmm.
to equalize the formula for everyone and to
Right.
remove barriers.
Mm-hmm.
So now the school department doesn't have to collect all this information about who has school lunches and who doesn't.
Right.
And now we're going to hopefully stop categorizing kids. Free and reduced lunch kids.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
Right.
These are kids. These are kids from our community, and they're, they all, especially in youth are youth, and they see themselves as equal.
Right.
They don't see themselves in the different ways that we want to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's phenomenal, especially for kids that need that nutrition
Okay.
and need to be, feeling like they have lunch and breakfast and whatever in their school.
Right.
And then whatever they have at home, it's great, but at least they have something. I think it makes all kids feel like they're part of the same community.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. I approved it right
Yes.
away. I was so happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we need to do more around that.
Right. More things more to make every child when they go to school feel like they're as equal, or feel like they don't have to feel embarrassed for a certain thing than other kids.
Right.
I totally agree with that. So what's coming up for you? What's coming up for Hilda Ramirez? For your listeners out there that are going to be listening to this, and I know you have a busy schedule, but are there any candidate forums, or are there any things that's coming up?
No, there's a lot of, tonight actually, Monday, September 21st, we have a forum at Mechanics Hall at 7 p.m. for the school committee.
Mm-hmm.
There are more forums coming up in October, and I believe that we have a very, very interesting year,
Mm-hmm.
Bill. And I think that what I ask everyone is to get involved. It doesn't matter
Right.
if you don't want to vote for this one or that one.
Mm-hmm.
Just go out and vote. Vote with passion.
Right.
Be informed, because we have an interesting year where a lot of people believe that this education piece is simpler, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated. And it's not a quick fix. So whatever challenges we're hearing that are happening at North and here and there, they're not easy fixes.
Right.
No one's sitting on their laurels not doing anything.
Right.
It's the complexity of human beings.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that getting the people to office has to be thoughtfully done
Mm-hmm.
in a way that you believe that people will align with what is needed for 26,000 kids in this district.
Yeah.
Not for one or two. There's a large volume of children that we're educating,
Right.
and we need to be thoughtful about doing the right thing for all of them
Mm-hmm.
and meeting their needs, and doing it in a society that's scarce in resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I ask everyone.
Right. And if you're a single parent out there and you have children and they're going to school, I just want to encourage you to get out and vote. Putting the right people in the school committee, putting the right people in office, putting the right people as our next president is vital to things improving and working together for the betterment of our city and our country, and our schools. So when is it?
Election
The
day.
Election day.
So
yes.
elections are Tuesday, November 3rd,
Mhm.
and the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. or 8 p.m. And so you can go out there if you don't know where you need to vote. You can just get that information at City Hall on the second floor.
Yep.
Or you can kind of go online and find out where you need to vote.
Right.
If there's anyone out there that's a new voter and just needs a little support,
Yep.
there are people like Neighbor to Neighbor. That's a resource in our community who they're very active and they'll go out to you if you can't physically go out and vote.
Okay.
There's so many things. We can send transportation out to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the city and everybody does a lot of things that day to make it accessible for everyone.
Right.
Your employer is mandated to allow you time to go vote.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's something that is so important. Is as important as breathing and drinking water, because it's gonna nurture our future generation of kids and of our city. And if we improve our cities, we can enjoy the quality of life that we all deserve.
Right. All right. So this was a good interview. I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
myself. Is there anything else you want to say to your supporters out there before we let you go?
I just would like to say thank you for those that believed in me, have believed in me, have stayed with me. And I just think that it's a great year. We need to really do all we can for, you know, for the kids, for the community. I'm proud to be in Worcester. And, you know, I'm a homeowner in Worcester, and I think there are some great things going on in the city, great economic development.
Yep.
So we really just need to make sure that all of our families can really realize their full potential in this city.
All right. And not only is she a proud member of Worcester, a proud citizen of Worcester, but I am William McNeill, and I am here with Hilda Ramirez, running for school committee, and Hilda Ramirez is Worcester.